Their father sold them like cattle, but a lone rancher appeared in their moment of despair and took the three sisters home. What did he do next? He changed everything. Dust rose in the middle of the dirt road, thick as smoke. Three girls stood side by side, their wrists tied with thick strips of cloth. The sun scorched their thin skin as their father, Antonio, shouted like a market vendor, "3 for 1 coin, 3 girls from the house!" Good girls raised in the forest. Who will give more? Yara, the eldest, squinted to hold back tears. Beside her, Jusara struggled to keep her tears in check. Retinia, the youngest, trembled as if she were ill. All three were dirty in torn clothes and barefoot. Men in the market walked by, looking, laughing. An old woman muttered, "He has no shame." Antonio turned and showed his belt. "Quiet, old woman. I've supported them until now. Let them take care of themselves." People pretended not to see. Some lowered their eyes, others crossed their arms. No one intervened. Then an old man approached, tall, in a worn leather hat and an unshaven beard, riding a horse. His shirt was unbuttoned to his chest, and his gaze was calm, like one who had buried more than he had loved. "I'll give 19 coins for the 3. His voice drowned out the market noise. Antonio looked away and laughed scornfully. 19 coins for 3 mouths to feed? Are you joking? The man said nothing more, pulled a bag from his pocket, and threw the coins onto the ground. The sound of their fall silenced everyone. "I'm taking them now," he said in an even voice. Antonio spat on the ground, collected the coins, and opened the cart. "Take them and don't show your face with them again. If they run away, that's your problem." The girls didn't understand. Yara looked into the man's eyes. He didn't seem cruel. There was sadness in him, but also firmness. He carefully untied each wrist, covered them with clean cloth, picked up Retinha, and placed her behind him on the horse. Then he gestured for the others to climb on. "Where are you taking us?" Jusara asked almost in a whisper. "Home," he replied, turning the horse. The journey was long. None of the 3 spoke. Tall grass scratched their legs. They crossed streams, rocks, old wooden bridges. On top of a hill, a simple house appeared with a wooden porch and a crooked roof. In the yard, 3 men waited silently. "This house is mine, and now it's yours," he said, dismounting his horse. The 3 men approached. Their faces were etched with time, their hands strong, and in their eyes was the same sadness. "These are my sons, Joan, Benta, and Tiago." Yara took her sister's hand. The young men didn't smile, but they didn't look away either. The youngest, Tiago, seemed nervous. The man took a kettle from the stove and poured the girls sugar water. Then he laid out clean, simple, neatly folded dresses. "No one here beats or imprisons. If you want to stay, stay. If you want to leave, leave. But while you're here, you eat, sleep, and don't have to bow to anyone." In the room, Jusara looked around. The bed was wooden, with a white sheet. In the corner stood a vase with dried flowers. She slowly sat down. "He's going to marry us to his sons," Yara whispered. "I don't know," Yara replied, looking out the window. "But he's not like our father, that much I know." The next day, the man sat with him on the porch, took off his hat, scratched his beard, and looked at the floor. "I didn't bring you here to serve anyone, but my sons have been alone for a long time. If you want to and feel it's yours, I want to see this house full of family. Only if you want to, not by force. No." Yara looked at the young men. Joan, the eldest, was neatly cleaning the stable. Benta was chopping wood. Tiago was drawing something on the ground with a stick. Retinha asked, "Do you have a wife?" He sighed deeply. "I did, but life took her, just like everything else in me until yesterday." She didn't understand, but Jusara understood and swallowed. That night, Yara looked at the sky. The stars twinkled slowly, as if they knew everything. She thought of running away, thought of crying, but deep in her chest, for the first time, she felt something different. It wasn't fear or sadness, but doubt. And in that doubt, she noticed that he carried not only silence, but also guilt. One afternoon, as she was hanging clothes on the line, Joanne walked by and placed a bag of flour on the table. "I baked a pie. It's too sweet, but Retinha might like it." She quietly replied, "Thank you," and he left. Time passed. Days in the desert are harsh, but when you live in peace, they seem shorter. The house filled with the scent of life. The porch was full of laughter. The yard was clean, their eyes became calmer. But peace doesn't easily forget pain. One evening, Benta returned from the road with a grim expression. A man was following me in the village with a scar on his face. Said he was looking for 3 girls and knew they were here. Zika slowly got up from his chair, as if carrying the past on his back. Did he say names? No, but he seemed to know everything. Zika looked at the ground for a few seconds, then at the orange sky. If he comes back, we'll talk. But if he comes with bad intentions, we'll do what we have to. In the house, the girls already knew that something would change. The peace they had found here was threatened, and no one knew if it would last another day or month. But one thing was clear. Meanwhile, the 3 sisters swept the porch and looked around, trying to understand this place. It was old, but clean, small, but smelled of safety. I never thought I'd feel calm in a house with a man, she said. Jusara laughed. Me neither. Retina squatted down to play with a skinny cat that appeared in the yard. For the first time, she smiled. At the end of the day, Tiago appeared with a plate covered with a cloth and offered it to Yara. I baked a corn cake. I like to cook. She looked surprised. Thank you. If you want, I can teach you. Teach me what? To take care of bees and to bake this cake. Yara took the plate suspiciously but nodded in gratitude. At night, when everyone was in their rooms, Zika took an old notebook and scribbled something with charcoal. It was a list. It had 3 names, Yara, Jusara, Retinha. Next to each, he drew a heart and a cross, folded the paper, put it in a drawer, and put out the lamp. Night fell on the farm to the sound of crickets and the smell of wet earth. And in that silence, for the first time, everyone slept without fear of being woken by screams. But no one knew that in the village, someone had seen Zika taking the girls away, and that someone didn't want to see peace where there had once been dirt. The story of the 3 sisters was just beginning. The wooden gate creaked as Zika pushed it with his shoulder. The horse entered slowly, as if respecting the silence of this corner of the world. 3 girls jumped off the cart one by one. The yard was dry, ducks roamed freely on the ground, and next to the outdoor oven, an old dog dozed. You can come in, Zika said, pointing to the house. No one locks the door here. Yara was the first to cross the threshold. It was a mud house, simple but tidy, with a hard earthen floor and the smell of wood. The stove still held warmth, and in the corner, an iron pot was steaming. Retina ran inside, as if escaping the world. Jusara lingered at the door, hesitating. Joan came in from the field with a hoe on his shoulder. Seeing the girls, he stopped, neither smiling nor speaking a word, but also not turning away. Soon, Benta appeared with 2 buckets of water, placed them on the ground, wiped his hands on his pants, and nodded. Tiago, the youngest, came out of the forest with a bundle of firewood on his back. He had dark, calm eyes, observing everything carefully. Zika called his sons to the well. These 3 will stay here. They were thrown into the world like cattle, but here they will be treated like people. If anyone touches one of them, they touch me. Understand? João nodded. Benta turned away. Tiago looked into his father's eyes, as if expecting to hear this. Inside the house, Yara examined the room where they would live. 3 hanging hammocks, an old chest, a lamp, and that was all. But it was the most decent place they had slept since their mother died. Before bed, she looked at Jusara, who was already falling asleep, curled up, and at Retina, who was gnawing at the edge of her shirt. He's not like our father, she whispered. I know, Retina replied. The next day, even before sunrise, Zika was already up, brewed coffee, and placed cornbread and white cheese on the table. You can eat. No one will hit you, he said, seeing the girls cower at the edge of the kitchen. They took the food with trembling hands. They no longer knew what it meant to sit at a table without looking at the belt hanging on the wall. After breakfast, Yara offered to help in the garden. Jusara washed the dishes. Retina played with a doll made from a corn cob that Tiago had left on the chair. At noon, everyone gathered in the shade of the mango tree. The desert heat was strong, but here it seemed a different wind blew, light as if the house breathed slower with people inside. Zika silently cut tobacco, sitting on a stool. Tiago sharpened a small knife. João cleaned his boots. Benta mended a leather loop. The girls sat on the bench, not talking, but listening carefully. Have you always lived here? Jusar asked. Zika looked up. After I lost my wife, I came here to escape what hurt me. I thought I would be alone until I died, and your fathers came with their sadness. The eldest buried his fiancée. The middle one lost his son to illness. The youngest only saw sadness within. Silence fell again, but it was no longer the same. It was a respectful silence. That afternoon, Zeka called Yara to the porch. Can I ask you a question? Yes. Are you going to stay? Yes. Then no. If you ever want to marry one of my sons, it will be by your will, not because of what happened yesterday. Yara took a deep breath. What if I never want to marry? Zika smiled slightly for the first time since she had known him. Then you will remain the mistress of the house, or everyone plants where they want to harvest. In the following days, the rhythm of life began to settle. The girls learned to use the wood stove, care for the chickens, and cope with the habits of each man in the house. Joan was silent, but fair. Benta was rough, but hardworking. Tiago was a mystery. One afternoon, Yara saw him drawing flowers on the ground with charcoal. You draw? I draw what I wish I could see. Like my mom smiling. She sat next to him, not saying a word. The floor was hot. The sun shone on the mud wall, and for the first time, Yara didn't want to run away. But she didn't know that in the village, rumors were already circulating about the girls who had disappeared with an elderly farmer. A man with debts and a thirst for revenge. A man who believed that women were not people, but merchandise. And while peace reigned in that simple house in the desert, on the other side of the road, a shadow grew. That morning, the well water seemed colder than usual. Yara unbound her hair, took a bucket, and called her sisters. They approached cautiously, as if even bathing was something for which one needed permission, but here, no one commanded them. Wash yourselves! The water is clean, Joan said, passing by with a sack of salt on his shoulder. There's soap on the stone if you want. Yara nodded, and he walked away without looking back. The three girls squatted by the well, wet their hair, rubbed their thin legs, laughing softly as the cold hit harder. It seemed that all the dirt of past days was washing away along with the fear. After bathing, they put on the simple dresses Zika had left on the chest. They were clean, ironed, smelling of coconut soap. It was little, but for those who had only rags until yesterday, it was almost a gift. In the kitchen, Jusara helped Tiago prepare bread. He was silent but patient. He showed her how to knead the dough, how to achieve the right consistency of the flour. Why do you bake bread? She asked in surprise. Because my mother loved it, and no one else did it like that. Jusara didn't answer, just continued to mix carefully. Her hands were small, but strong. Retinha sat in the rocking chair on the porch with the cat on her lap. She didn't talk much, but now she smiled more often. At every sound of a horse, she still cringed, but no longer trembled as before. At the end of the day, Zika appeared with a cloth in his hand. Inside were flour and dried meat. Jusara didn't answer immediately, finished watering the last bed, and only then turned around. I want to, but you promise not to disappear when the conversation gets serious. Benta smiled, a rarity, and nodded. Joan was slower to open up. For 2 days he was silent, walking back and forth in the pen. Only on one moonlit night did he call Retina to the porch. I don't know how you managed to smile so much after everything. I look at you and I see my fiancée, whom I lost. Not because you look alike, but because she also smiled, even when the world was falling apart. Retina pressed against his arm with childlike eyes that time had not erased. I can smile because of her if you want. Joan lowered his gaze, moved. I'm not good at this, but I promise to try. The next week, the house prepared for a wedding. There was no white dress, no church, no priest. Maiska invited the closest neighbors, cleaned the yard, decorated with banana leaves and wildflowers. The girls wore simple clothes, their hair braided with colorful ribbons. The boys dressed in their best. The wedding rings were made of vine and wrought silver, crafted by Tiago, using a buckle from his father's old belt. The sun beat down high when Zika spoke under the mango tree. I have no paper, no pen, no authority, but I believe in a given word. If you promise to take care of each other, then you are already married, come what may, for life. People applauded. The kisses were modest, the gazes deep. There was no dancing, but there were hugs. There was little food, but there was cornbread, baked cassava, and water from the jug for everyone. At night, the bonfire lit up their faces. The couples sat together, as if beginning to understand that they were now part of something bigger. Zika, tired, moved away a little and watched from afar. Joan came up to him and sat down. Thank you for not giving up on us. Zeka nodded, his eyes filled with tears. Life is a strange thing, son. I lost a lot, but it seems that in the end, it gave me back what I didn't even know I needed. That night, as the fire crackled and the sky filled with stars, no one spoke of the past, pain, or oblivion. There was only hope, and it began here, on this dry land, with three couples who united not by compulsion, but by choice. Where there had once been screams, now there was only laughter. Where there had been selling, now there was connection. But the desert never stays quiet for long. And while everyone slept, a horse crossed the road in the dark, and a man held a crumpled piece of paper in his hands. On it was Zika's name handwritten, and a blood stain in the corner. Peace, as always, was fleeting. After the simple ceremony in the yard, the days became easier. A different rhythm settled in the house. The couples got used to the routine, learned from each other, shared water from the well, the weight of the hoe, and the silent words of the desert. Yara now shared a room with Tiago. The first night was strange. They slept in separate hammocks next to each other. She listened to his breathing, feeling the warmth of his still body. There was no touching or rushing, only the respect of two who understood the value of trust. One morning, while Tiago was tending to the bees, Yara decided to tidy up the chest where he kept his drawings. She wanted to separate the clean sheets from the used ones, maybe frame some for the living room wall. Deep inside the chest, she found another notebook, older, with a leather cover and a worn clasp. She carefully opened it. The first pages were scribbled with doodles, but from a certain point, there were texts. Letters written in dense handwriting, addressed to someone named Belinha. Belinha, I saw your smile in my dream again. Woke up crying. The world has been grayer since you left. Belinha, today I tried to draw your face, but my hand trembled. I wanted to see if there was still something beautiful in this desert. Yara read slowly, feeling the weight of the words. Page after page, Tiago spoke of love, pain, longing. He told of the day he lost the will to live, the guilt he carried, and the fear of forgetting her scent. She carefully closed the notebook and leaned it against the wall. She stayed there for a while, looking at the mud floor, trying to understand what it meant. It wasn't jealousy. It was a different sadness, as if intruding on someone else's grief. Tiago came in with hands dirty from the earth. Were you digging in the chest? He asked. She nodded, unsure whether to speak. I found your notebook. He stopped. His face paled. I was going to throw it away, but I couldn't. Belinha, your fiancée? Yes. We met in school in the city. She came to live with me here. She got sick after the flood. We didn't have time to call a doctor. She died alone when I was in the field. I never forgave myself. Yara lowered her eyes. Do you still love her? Tiago sat on the floor, wiped his hands on a cloth, and thought before answering. I loved so much that I thought I never could again. I thought I couldn't look at someone the way I looked at her until I met you. She didn't answer immediately, silently looking at him. Then she walked over and sat down next to him. I don't want to take anyone's place or erase your pain, but I am here and I want to stay. Tiago gently placed his hand on her shoulder, as if holding something fragile. He didn't kiss her, didn't promise anything, just stayed by her side. Outside, life continued. Benta and Jusara planted corn in a new plot. Retinia made tortillas with Joan, who no longer hid his smiles as he used to. Zika tended the chicken coop, whistling an old song only he remembered. But when night came, the sky became strange. Clouds gathered in the distance, and a warm wind began to blow. Through the windows, Zika stepped out onto the porch and looked at the horizon. He felt in his chest that something was approaching. It wasn't just a change in the weather. Joan came out of the pen with a piece of torn leather. The gate was open, and near the forest were horse tracks. Someone passed by there. Zika didn't answer immediately, took his rifle and placed it on his shoulder. Reinforce the fence and tell the girls to sleep together in the big room tonight. João nodded and left. In the house, Tiago warned Yara. Benta warned Jusara. João took Retinia. The three gathered in one room, locked the door, and placed a bench against it. They slept, embracing, as in the old house, where fear was normal and hope was just a dream. In the middle of the night, Yara woke up to a strong wind. The door creaked. A shadow passed through the window crack. She slowly got up, put her ear to the wood. Did you hear that? She whispered to Jusara. I heard. It was close. Very close. The three outside fell silent. No sound, no dog, no chicken. Only the heavy silence of those who sense danger. Yara went to the window, saw nothing, but knew he was there. The scarred man hadn't forgotten, and this time he wasn't just watching. He was going to come in and not leave. The day began strangely. The sky was clear, but the air felt heavy. The smell of grass was stronger, and the silence of the animals made everything more tense. Zika woke up earlier than everyone, as usual. He sat on the bed, clasped his hands tightly, and placed them on his chest. He felt a strange heaviness, as if something was growing inside him. He tried to get up slowly, but his legs gave way. Nevertheless, he put on his shirt, put on his hat, and went out to tend the chicken coop. He walked, dragging his feet weakly. When Benta saw him, he frowned. "Dad, are you okay?" "Just tired. Age." Benta didn't quite believe him, but didn't insist. Zika was a man who didn't like to complain. He preferred to fall on his feet than lie down from weakness. In the kitchen, Jusara was making coffee with Retinha. Tiago went out to check on the bees, and João went to the village for salt. Yara was rubbing clothes in a basin until she heard Zeka's dry cough from the yard. She dropped everything and ran to him. She found the old man sitting on a stump, bent over, with his hands on his knees. He wouldn't stop coughing. "You're pale. Do you want to lie down?" "It'll pass soon. Just a cold." "It doesn't look like a cold. It seems more serious." Zika slowly got up and walked back into the house. That evening, he didn't eat dinner, sitting silently in the corner. His hat covered his eyes. He pretended to doze, but heard everything. That night, he developed a fever. He sweated coldly and groaned softly. Yara woke up and called the others. Tiago placed a damp cloth on his forehead. Retinha made guava leaf tea. Jusara sat by the bed, holding his hand. "It's not just fatigue, is it?" she asked. Zika slowly opened his eyes. "It's been growing inside for a long time. I pretended nothing was wrong, but now it's hard to hide." "Why didn't you say anything earlier?" "Because I wanted to see you at peace first. I wanted to see you love each other, live, take care of the house. I wanted to leave quietly, knowing I left a home, not emptiness." Joan came in the morning with a sack of salt and was surprised by the movement in the house. Seeing his father in bed, he understood everything with one glance. "I'll go for a doctor in town." "No need," Zeka said weakly. "I know what this is. The illness has already consumed my whole body. The doctor will only give me a farewell paper. What should we do now? Live with me until I'm gone, without tears or despair. Just let me see your smiles. That's all I ask." In the following days, the house became a vigil. Everyone took turns caring for him. Zika no longer got up, spoke little, but watched every corner of the house carefully, as if wanting to remember everything. One afternoon, he called Tiago and Yara to the bed. Deep inside the chest, there's a box, and in it, a letter. Open it only after I'm gone. "Stop, Dad," Tiago said with tears in his eyes. "This isn't a farewell, it's the truth. There are things you need to learn in your own time." João refused to leave his father. He sat with him, reading passages from an old book, even if Zeka fell asleep in the middle. Jusara changed his damp cloths on his forehead with care. Retinha combed his beard every evening, as if it helped to keep him for one more day. On a cold night, Zika asked to look at the sky. Tiago and João carried him to the porch, laid him in a hammock, and covered him with a blanket. "It's good here," he murmured, looking at the stars. "I remember when I first brought my wife here. We sat like this, looked at the sky, and thought, how many children will we have? Life didn't give us time to fulfill everything, but now, looking at you, I feel that something worked out." Everyone gathered around silently. Only the wind and the rustling of grass could be heard. Zika closed his eyes for a few minutes. When he opened them, a slight smile played on his lips. "You know I love you?" "Yes, we know, Dad," they all replied together. He sighed, stayed a little longer, breathing slowly, and then asked to return to bed. Tiago carried him in his arms. The next morning, he didn't wake up. He lay with his hands folded on his chest, a peaceful face, no pain, just rest. The grief was silent. People from the hill came. Each brought a wildflower, a bean sprout, a piece of cornbread. Zika was buried under the mango tree, his feet facing the yard. Instead of a cross, a stone with his name carved by knife was placed. And in the following week, despite the pain in their chests, the house didn't stop, because he asked for it, because he had prepared everything, because now the house was for everyone, and no one would be left behind anymore. It felt like Zika was more than a father to everyone in that house. The house had been silent since Zika was buried. It wasn't the silence of heavy grief, but a silence that is respected. Every corner of the house held a piece of him. The hat hanging on the hook in the kitchen, the forgotten pipe on the shelf, the empty rocking chair on the porch. Tiago tended the garden diligently, and Yara baked cornbread the way Zeka liked it. Only now she let it cool before serving, as Zeka did, to save firewood. Benta repaired the fences in the pen with more force than necessary. Deep inside the farm, Benta slowly sharpened his machete. Tiago lit the lamp in the room. Joan fed the horse, and the old rancher described something in an old notebook hidden in a distant drawer. The girls didn't know yet, but this land, this ranch, this family would change everything, and everything would hurt before it healed. Harsh scenes, true injustice, and twists that will make you shudder. The next day, the sun had not yet risen, and Yara was already awake. She splashed her face with water from an iron bucket, gathered her hair, and barefoot, went down to the kitchen. The kettle on the wood stove was still steaming, but no one in the house seemed to be awake. There was the silence of the forest, a place where time passed slowly. She opened the front door and saw Zika sitting on the porch doorstep with an unlit cigarette in his mouth and his eyes lost on the horizon. "Up early," he said without turning around. "Couldn't sleep. I also sleep little." She sat on the floor next to him, still with disbelief, as if not understanding whether she was in a refuge or a trap. "Why did you buy us?" Zika slowly exhaled. "Because you were thrown into the world like cattle. I saw too much to pretend it didn't hurt. And now? What are you going to do with us?" He looked at her firmly. "What do you want to do here? This place has no master. There are people who try to fix what life broke." Yara remained silent. The silence between them was not heavy. It was a silent conversation of those who bear similar scars. In the house, Retina woke up with swollen eyes. Jusara helped her get dressed. "Do you think he's going to marry us to those men?" Retina asked softly. "I think he wants us to be close, but not like our father. He doesn't have an evil look." In the yard, Joan was already saddling the horse. Bento was going out with a machete to cut bamboo. Tiago remained more withdrawn, tending to the bees at the edge of the field. During lunch, everyone sat at the table. Jusara said he only calms down when his fingers start bleeding. Juan looked at the grave under the mango tree for a long time. Retinya brought fresh flowers every day. It was her way of continuing the conversation with her grandfather. But peace, as always, was fleeting. One morning, while everyone was busy, the sound of a horse on the road attracted attention. It was loud and confident, someone who wasn't afraid to make their presence known. Bento went to the gate and saw a man dismount from his animal with a look that left no doubt. It was the same man who had appeared a few months ago. A scar on his face, a wide hat, a stern face. But this time, he wasn't alone. Behind him stood two armed men with the gaze of mercenaries, silently crossing their arms. The man headed straight for Joan, who was in the yard. "Where's the old man?" Joan firmly crossed his arms. "He's under the mango tree. An honest man rests there." The man laughed dryly. "Honesty is a matter of perspective. In my opinion, he owes me, and you inherited the debt." Tiago slowly approached from behind. "What debt?" "A promise. I was going to take one of the girls. He cheated me. Now I'm here to claim. Not with words, but with land. This farm was his. Not anymore." Yara appeared on the porch.